You're listening to the Do Something More podcast, and this is episode 25. Have I done any good making service a guilt-free part of your life? Welcome to the Do Something More podcast, a service-oriented show where we highlight the helpers who inspire us all to do something more. I'm your host, Melissa Draper. Thank you so much for being here. Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm excited to talk about this subject matter today, making service a guilt-free part of your life, something I feel very passionate about, obviously, with this podcast. But before I get into that, I would just like to say thank you. Thank you to any of you that have shared this podcast or an episode with someone, or to anyone that's left a rating or a review. All of those things are how a podcast like mine that's really started from ground zero gets seen by new eyes and heard by new people. And so I truly appreciate any effort that someone has made for the podcast in that way. And I would just love to ask and encourage anyone that's listening, if you've heard an episode and you thought of someone you knew while you listened to that episode, please share it with them. Or if you know someone else that's passionate about service or giving back to the community, let them know about this podcast. I'd love to share it with those who are passionate about these things. And also, if you've been listening to several episodes and you found this content inspiring or helpful, please go and give us a nice rating or leave a review to let us know and let me know about the good things you enjoy about this podcast. I just wanted to get that out at the beginning to say thank you and to also encourage you to continue to share and rate and review. So it means a lot to me, again, as someone who's starting this all just from the ground up. But I would love to get into this subject matter today. Have I done any good making service a guilt-free part of your life? So this is obviously a topic I think I could talk on for quite a bit because it really is one of the premises of the podcast. As we go back to the tagline of the podcast, where we highlight the helpers who inspire us all to do something more. So the first premise of my podcast is just that, highlighting the helpers, showing the good things that others are doing. But I want to use that as well to inspire us all to do something more. So really helping others learn how to make service part of their life is one of my goals of this podcast, of how to make it a guilt-free and natural part of your life. So it's something you look forward to and enjoy. And so I just wanted to take some of the ideas that we've learned already. This is the 25th episode. So we've already heard and learned a lot of good things from the guests that we've had on this episode and the other topics that I've addressed. I kind of wanted to sum them up a little in this podcast and also just leave one spot for anyone to listen to get some ideas on how to make service part of your life. First, I want to go into what kind of inspired the title of my podcast. So there is a hymn in my church that is a somewhat popular hymn called Have I Done Any Good? And I love this hymn. It's one of my favorites. And there are a lot of arrangements that have been done over the years and been shared on the internet. And I'm actually going to share some of those in the show notes. So you can go link through and listen to them. They're all different in the way that they approach the song. But every time I listen to any of them, I love it. I love the song. I love the message. And I just want to share some of those lyrics. So, have I done any good in the world today? Have I helped anyone in need? Have I cheered up the sad and made someone feel glad? If not, I have failed indeed. Has anyone's burden been lighter today because I was willing to share? Have the sick and the weary been helped on their way? When they needed my help, was I there? Then wake up and do something more. There's that podcast title. Then dream of your mansion above. Doing good is a pleasure, a joy beyond measure, a blessing of duty and love. There are chances for work all around just now, opportunities right in our way. Do not let them pass by saying, sometime I'll try, but go and do something today. 'Tis noble of man to work and to give. Love's labor has merit alone. Only he who does something helps others to live. To God, each good work will be known. Then wake up and do something more. Then dream of your mansion above. Doing good is a pleasure, a joy beyond measure, a blessing of duty and love. So I wanted to share that as kind of inspiration. And again, go listen to the arrangements that I'm going to put in the show notes, and they'll just pump you up and get you inspired and help you feel good about service and all the good things that it can do. But I wanted to go into today some more practical ways that we can take the ideas from that song and put them into action ourselves. Now, one line of the song I've heard people talk about that says, have I cheered up the sad and made someone feel glad? If not, I have failed indeed. And I have had people say, well, that doesn't sound encouraging. That just sounds like I failed. And I don't feel like that's what it's saying. I think it's saying to acknowledge and see all the good that we can do. And that is my first practical tip that I'm going to share in this episode. To make service a part of your life and to remove the guilt. There's no guilt here. We do not need to feel bad about all the things we're not doing. We need to start by acknowledging all the things that we are already doing. So that's my first tip. Before you do any service, sit down and acknowledge all the good you already do. And there are lots of small things that I'm sure all of us can add to that list. Even just being part of a family, whether you're a mother or father, brother, sister, being part of a family, you get lots of opportunities to serve and to give and to do things for family members. Acknowledge all of those. All of those things are good things and they're service and they matter. It matters. Make a list of some of the simple things that you can think of that you do. Maybe there's things that you like to do to be nice to people you work with and coworkers. Or maybe there's things and opportunities you've had to smile or to say a kind word to someone as you were out running errands. Or maybe you have a simple role that you fulfill in your community or in your church. Stop and acknowledge the good that you are already doing and realize that you're already making a contribution. Another way that I've kind of approached this as I thought about this tip was when I was a young mother many times, and I still sometimes get this way, you might get discouraged that you didn't get all the things done on your to-do list that you wanted to do in any given day. And that would happen many times because as a mother, especially a young mother with littles running around, you had so many little things that you ended up doing throughout the day that none of them were on your list. So you'd get to the end of the day and feel like I didn't do anything, even though you spent a busy day doing so much. And so I came up with the idea I called it the backwards to-do list. I've now heard and read other things on the internet that people have done, but when I came up with it, I had never heard of any of those things. I thought I was extremely original and came up with it on my own. And I called it the backwards to-do list. So when I started feeling discouraged like that, especially if it was near the end of the day, I would sit down and instead of having my to-do list that I wanted to cross off, I would look back through the day and write down all the things that I did do, all the things that did get done. And sometimes I would write even the little things like getting my children up and dressed for the day. That was sometimes a thing that took some time, or feeding them, or getting the dishwasher unloaded. I mean, simple things. And I would make that list, and it would very quickly help me turn my attitude around. Instead of feeling grumpy or like I was put upon, I would feel grateful for all the things that I did do and for the opportunities I did have to serve my family, even if it didn't look quite like the to-do list I had made in my head at the beginning of the day. So that's the same idea here. Instead of trying to write down all the service you think you should be doing or the service you want to be doing, acknowledge the good you already do. And along with that, when you are given an opportunity, when something pops up in your life and you're able to just stop and help someone, stop and acknowledge that. Be grateful for that opportunity. So just as one example, a week or so ago, I was grocery shopping, and as I returned my cart to the grocery return area, I saw several carts in, someone had left their purse there in the cart. And I've had my purse stolen before, so I know what an awful experience it is to go through that. And so I knew that whoever had left this purse there, once they realized it was gone, some of the feelings that they might be experiencing. So I went and took the purse. And at first I was going to just take it into the store customer service, but then I was like, well, maybe it's just someone close by and I can drop it off at their house. So I opened the purse, and they had their driver's license in there with their address, and they had a couple of other things showing their address. And so I drove to their house. They weren't home. I knocked on the door. I just left a little note with it saying, I found this purse in the grocery return area. Here you go, with a smiley face, and left it there. They had a screen door that I could close it in and leave it. And it was a really simple experience. They lived close to the store. It wasn't huge out of my way. But, as a religious person, I believe in God. So I will say a prayer many times, and I'll say, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to serve that person, God. And that's what I did that day. I just kind of said a little prayer and made that acknowledgement. I said, thank you. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to help someone else so they did not have to experience the feelings I've experienced of having a purse stolen or losing a purse. And so you can do that. You can pause and recognize those opportunities when they come. And I think it just helps settle in a little more the good that you're doing and the good opportunities that you get. So that's my first tip. Acknowledge the good you're already doing. And there's different ways that you can do that. And my second tip is something we've already talked on the podcast about quite a bit. And that's the power of your words. It really takes almost no time or effort to say something kind or to be nice. And this can come in many forms. It can come in the form of compliments, either to someone we know or a stranger. It can come in the form of thank yous, of sending a thank you note, sending a text, or just telling something and being specific about what you are thanking them for. It can come in the form of acknowledging the hard work that someone put in. So when you're at an event, at work, or you go to a nice dinner for your church, or you go to a fun event for your kids at their school, to find someone that you know had a hand in that and just acknowledging, going up to them and saying, something like this takes a lot of hard work and I really appreciate it. Thank you. We had a great time tonight. Those are some ideas, but those are all so simple. They are so simple. They do not take much effort, and they can have a huge impact. They really can make a difference. Just a few weeks ago, that was my episode where I talked about the power of a compliment. And I told a cool story that I experienced. If you haven't heard it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But that story really taught me the power a compliment can have, even with someone that you don't know. And it really takes no time or effort to do it. You're simply just sharing the good, positive thoughts that were already there in your head. I also had another episode back in the earliest days of the show about using a thank you to engage in service and how that can make a difference. But just taking the time to tell someone thank you. So there is a lot of power in our words, and we can use that to serve others. So if you're wanting to just start small with making service and reaching out to others part of your life, I suggest you can start there with just the power of your words, saying kind things to those around you, to those you associate with, family, but also to strangers and acquaintances as well. It really can make a difference, and it's a great way to serve in our society. Another tip I want to give comes in the form of two different quotes. And they might seem like they contradict each other, but I think they actually serve as a great reminder for ways to make service part of our lives. So the first is from Camilla Kimball, and the quote is, "Never suppress a generous thought." If you have a good thought about something, don't suppress it. Realize that you've had that thought, write it down, remember it. So for me, I actually have a Post-it note that I keep in my planner. I have a paper and pencil planner. I know I'm a little old school, but I really, really love them. And I don't think, at least yet, I can move to digital because I love my planner. And in that planner, I have a Post-it note. I also do have a notes area on my phone as well, if I happen to not have my planner with me. And as I have thoughts come about reaching out to someone specifically, or serving someone, or something I should do, or maybe it was an organization I read about or heard about, and I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to donate some money, or I want to look into that. I just write them all down. I keep all of those generous thoughts. I do not suppress them, as she says in that quote, and I write them down. I keep notes. Because sometimes they come at times too that I can't do anything about them, or it's a really busy day or stressful time, or it will pop into my head at a time that I'm not always ready to act on it. So I write it down so I don't forget it. And then I can look over those later. I can ponder on them. And then that goes to my other quote. This quote is from Anne Morrow Lindbergh, and it says, "My life cannot implement in action the demands of all the people to whom my heart responds." And that quote really speaks to me because there's so much truth to it. And that's the reality of both. And those two quotes, I don't know, I've just found a way to kind of merge them in my life. So I don't suppress the generous thoughts. I have a good thought. I think that might be something good to act on. But then it is okay to realize that no one person can do and take care of all the good that needs to be done in the world. And there's heartache, there's things that go on, there's even people we personally hear about that we want to help in unique ways. And sometimes because of our own lives, we can't always act in the ways we initially thought. And that is okay. That's human. That's normal. As she says in this, that really not anyone can implement in action all the demands that come to our heart. But instead of being depressed and discouraged by that, I don't suppress the good thoughts. I write them down, and I realize that it can be a beautiful thing too. It's a good reminder that we are all in this together, and we all get to work together and serve together and bring our talents together to serve and lift and help. And who I feel moved to reach out to will be different than who you do, or who my neighbor does, or my friend, or my husband. And the causes I feel strongly to champion will be different than the causes that someone else feels strongly to take up. But as we all do our personal best to love and serve, we can be a powerful force for goodness in the world together. And we don't need to feel discouraged about the small portion that we do contribute, because it all matters and makes a difference. So don't suppress those good thoughts. Write them down, think about them, but please don't beat yourself up if you cannot perfectly act on each one. That is human. You are normal. And sometimes life happens, and that's the way things go. But I have found that if we're willing and wanting to serve, those thoughts will come and ideas will keep coming on how to put them into action. And we don't need to stress about it. We just need to keep doing the best we can and feeling encouraged about it. And I also want to give the thought too that sometimes it's okay if it takes us a while to act on a generous thought. So maybe there was someone you knew that had a baby and you had the thought, I should take them dinner, because I really liked it when people brought me dinner when I had a baby. And maybe you wrote that down or put it on the notes in your phone, like I just suggested. And maybe months go by before you're able to really act on that. And so you might be tempted to cross it off and be like, well, I did have a thought to do that, but now it's 6 months later and I never did it. So I'm a failure and I'm going to cross it off. No, it was a good thought. Stick with it. I don't know of any mother that even when her baby is 6 months old will be sad if you bring her and her family dinner. You can still act on it. My baby is 7 years old. And so if someone came today and said, I had a thought 7 years ago to bring you guys dinner when you had a baby and I never did, here's dinner, I would be like, cool, I don't have to fix dinner. I think it would be awesome. And it wouldn't be weird. Maybe it would be weird for some people, but it wouldn't be weird for me. I would love it. It would make me feel so loved that someone was still thinking about me 7 years later and wanted to bring me dinner. And I think sometimes we do that with those good thoughts. We think, oh, I had that and I should have reached out to her and I did it and I failed. I failed to act through on that. You might still have plenty of time to act through on that. And if not, other opportunities might pop up too along those same lines. So I just think we need to give ourselves grace. We need to be kind to ourselves and we need to act on the things that we have the power to act on and not beat ourselves up when we can't always respond in all the ways that we want to. And I have one final story with that. So when my third was born, I had, after he was a few months old, I had several physical things pop up, and those kind of snowballed until I was experiencing crippling anxiety and depression. And that went on for a few years. But when it first hit, when he was, probably 9 or 10 months old, it just hit me like a rock. I'd never really experienced something to that length in that way before. And it was just a really hard time in my life. And I remember one day in particular, a friend of mine knocked on the door. And so my baby at this point was 9 or 10 months old. And she had made one of those towels that you can make for babies, but some will they'll take like a washcloth and sew it at the top. So it's like the little hood that you put on them. So you put the little hood when you get them out of the bathtub and wrap them all up. She'd made one of those and she brought it. And I love those, by the way. I think the little hood on the washcloth stays on the baby's head way better than some of the store-bought ones. And I remember she brought that to the door and she was apologizing and feeling dumb because my baby was like 9 months old and she'd had this baby gift that she'd wanted to give me ever since he was born. But it was during this time that I was really struggling. And I don't think I even explained that struggle to her, but just having her come and knock on the door And I actually answered it. I didn't always answer the door in those days, but I did that time. And just having her give me that gift at that time and sharing her love for me and me being able to just talk to her for a minute, it was what I needed that day. And so I actually needed that gift that she felt so bad that she didn't even make it or get it to me till 9 months later after the thought. I needed it 9 months, 10 months later. That is when I needed the visit from her. It wasn't right when she had first thought about it. And so that's the final thought I give to is as you have those recurring thoughts to do good, don't get discouraged if you can't always act on them immediately in the way that you want. Keep them down, write them on that little post-it note, review them, and do them when you can. And realize that you are doing good. And as you do your best to try and act on those in the time frame that you can, you will be able to serve and to help others. So that was kind of a long explanation with those quotes, but I think that can be a great tip. And finally, I just want to share that a way to make service a guilt-free part of your life, another way, is to quit with any comparison. Don't compare yourself to what someone else is doing or has felt inspired to do, and just focus on what you feel inspired to do. See your gifts, your talents, and look for opportunities for you to use them. And you can use those in official ways and unofficial ways. We've already had many episodes on this podcast. My second one was with my mother-in-law, sewing quilts, or with the little free libraries with my friend that loves to read. Or we talked about that mental health run with like the teenager that loved running. And I love those. I love seeing people taking something that's a passion for them and using it to serve others. And so you have your own unique gifts and talents, use them. Service can be something that you're excited about and you look forward to because it's intertwined with something you love as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So look around, look at the things that you already enjoy in your life that bring you fulfillment, and think of ways you could serve others with some of those gifts and talents and interests that you already have. And it can be in the form of serving for an organization or a nonprofit, but it doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be something like that. Maybe your talent is simply being a good listener. And so you look for opportunities to just sit and listen and be that listening ear for someone. Maybe you're really good with children. And so you just look for opportunities to watch a neighbor's children or to go and help someone in those situations. It doesn't have to be huge, but I think when we realize that we can take the way we do things and naturally do things and the gifts and talents we have to serve, that it can make it a good and enjoyable experience instead of something we're feeling like we have to do. And I think we've talked about that on this show a lot, but think of your gifts, think of your talents, and use them in the ways that fit for you. As one example of that, my husband loves to bake, and he especially loves baking bread. He learned how to do it many years ago when he was kind of going through a stressful time in his life, and it became kind of this therapeutic thing for him to do, to bake bread. And he's perfected it over the years, and he makes really good bread. And he makes it often. And we will often, as a family, or he will, or I will, take one of those loaves and go and deliver and share it with someone. And I love the times I deliver it. People always assume it's me, but I'm like, no, I cannot make bread. This is my husband's. He made it. It's really good. And he loves making that bread. It's enjoyable for him. and he loves sharing it with other people. And I know that sharing that simple loaf of bread has helped and comforted many people. And for me, I am obviously a woman of words. I love having a good chat. And many times that is the way I choose to serve. I just go knock on someone's door. Usually it's someone who's older. I love visiting elderly women or couples in my neighborhood and community, and I love sitting down and talking with them. It brings me a lot of joy. Like I said, because I am a natural talker, I'm a person of words, and I'm an old soul too, I think. And so that is a way I have often served very naturally. It doesn't feel like a burden because it brings so much joy to me. So I don't know what it is for you, but think about the things you do, the good things that you are striving for, and think of how you can use them to serve others. So, those are some of my tips. Those are just a few things. Obviously, this is something we talk on the podcast about a lot. So, this won't be the last time we address this topic, but I wanted to put some of these ideas all together today. So, first, acknowledge the good you already do. Make that backwards to-do list. Instead of thinking of all the things you're not doing, think of all the things you are already doing to serve others, and acknowledge those opportunities that you're given. Second, realize the power of your words and the way that you can use them to serve and to help and to lift others. It's a really simple way and can be so powerful. And third, to never suppress a generous thought, but to also realize that you cannot implement in action the demands of all the people to whom your heart responds. And use those together to realize the ways that you can serve, but also be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, as you can't do everything, but that doesn't mean that what you are doing doesn't make a difference. And the fourth is to not compare yourself, but to realize your own unique gifts and talents and realize how you can use those to serve and to help others. And I want to add one final fifth one, is to make service a family affair. And service can be such a huge blessing and a powerful thing when we do it in a group, when we do it with others. And so that's my fifth. And that was another episode I had this summer, how to engage kids in service. But no matter what your family looks like, maybe you don't have kids in your family right now, but you can make it a family affair. Look for ways that you as a family can find opportunities to serve together. That might look like making a list yourselves and just writing down different ideas you come up with. It might look like using an organization like Just Serve to help you find places to serve and to come up with ideas. And it might look like reaching out and asking people what are some ideas to serve in the community. But make it a family affair. And when you involve and do things as a group, as a family together, that's when service really can also have a powerful effect on everyone's lives. So those are my 5 tips. I hope they can be useful and helpful to you as you think about how you can make service a guilt-free part of your life. So thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time.